Hello, this is Tim from Radiolab, and on our recent Galápagos episode, one of the many characters that we met was this guy named Lonesome George. He's the famous Pinta Island tortoise, last of his kind, and this is a spoiler alert. After decades of fruitless attempts by scientists to breed him, he died in 2012. But that's not really the end of his story, because after he died, they froze George, they put him in a crate, and they shipped him to the U.S., where he was unpacked by this guy. Do you mind just telling me your name and where we are?
Sure. I'm George Dante, and we're here at my studio, Wildlife Preservations in Woodland Park, New Jersey.
He's the taxidermist who spent months preserving Lonesome George piece by piece, and he walked me through the process.
So this is George's actual shell. Once we began the typical taxidermy process on George, we took his shell, cleaned it, and then tanned it. And that is what we're working off of now.
And next to the shell...
Wow. This is the part that most belies his age.
This is the plastron, which protected the underside of his body.
Yes, every little bit of scratch and nick on there is a bit of living.
Yeah. And was this part right here? Is this his this is where his head is?
This is actually the back portion. That's where his
okay.
his vent would be. This is actually the front portion of where his neck would come out here.
Okay.
Which is interesting. You'll see one of the characteristics of male tortoises. You see the depression here.
Huh.
That's actually concave, and that's so the male tortoises can mount the females, the shell.
Oh, yeah.
George, as it turns out, didn't end up doing much of that at all. And then if you flip over the plastron...
So this is the inside of the shell. Wow. And as you can see, it's a very clean structure.
You see all these fissures where the different pieces connect. It looks, to me, kind of like a skull. Then, of course, there are those massive tortoise feet.
So what you're looking at here is the positive out of the mold of George's back legs and his tail.
Wow.
So we took this. We were able to make a complete cast of both his back legs and his tail when he was propped up in that walking position.
And then there's George's head. Right after uncrating him, they immediately started to put his head in these buckets of silicone to make these molds from which George Dante made casts.
We have the closed mouth model of his head. Again, gives us great detail of his anatomy. We did make one cast open mouth, so we were able to keep this as a great reference of not only Lonesome George, but just the interior mouth structure of a Galápagos tortoise.
And so George Dante took all the different casts of Lonesome George's body and put them all together. And the day I visited, he was doing maybe the hardest part.
We were not able to make a cast of George's neck. The anatomy just wasn't clear enough when we defrosted him. So what we're doing right now is actually working on the wrinkles of George. If you look at photographs of him, you'll see these very intricate wrinkles throughout his neck. So what I'm doing now is actually working on adding these little bits of clay to create those wrinkles.
So once the clay was ready, the plan was to take Lonesome George's original skin out of the freezer and pull it over the model, and then put the shell, the plastron, the underside, put those back on.
There he is, Lonesome George.
Which they did shortly after my visit, and sure enough, he now looks every bit like his former self. And Lonesome George is now at the Museum of Natural History in New York, where you'll find him on display until January 4th, 2015, at which point he will be sent back to Quito in Ecuador. Big thanks to George Dante and Wildlife Preservations, and if you haven't heard the episode, go to radiolab.org, and it's called Galápagos.